Today's session is Origin and Hardwood Flooring with Jake and Sam. Take it away, Jake.
Thanks, Joe. All right, so I have surrounding me a couple of our examples of hardwood flooring, but I want to start with some slides to kind of introduce what we're going to cover today. Medallions and inlay, patching and repair, and hardware installation. When we're talking about medallions, we're typically talking about circular patterns. They're things that you can build yourself. They're things that you can buy prefabbed. And typically, the reason they're circular is it's a lot easier to just use a circle template and a normal router and throw it into a pre-existing floor. When we're using Origin, we're not so stuck to a circular pattern. We can stray away and we can do, like you see down in the corner, more of a scalloped edge or text or whatever it is directly into the floor. So why is Origin so good for this? Imagine not actually needing to have a physical template. Every template that you need is right there on the tool, digital, like I said, whether it be circular, triangular, any shape that you can imagine. You have that same level, that CNC quality and precision directly on hand on the job site. It allows you to correct things on the fly, and if something goes south, you break a part, you forget a part, and make the part right there on the fly on the job site. And then the quick and easy on-tool design for simple jobs, with circles, rectangles, squares, on-tool text, anything like that. No computer needed right off the bat. So the process we go through when we're doing a flooring inlay, start with your design, come out as an SVG file, and we cut all of our positive parts. I cut all my positive parts to a 0-inch offset, because then we can move to our pocket, the part that's actually going into the floor, and we can adjust our pocket based on the size of our positive pieces. So taking that micro adjusting offsets, negative offsets, to get that fit just right. And finally, install. I want to show off some things that I have here, starting with hardware. So we have our, well, I would say these are beyond just standard vents. Something like this, where this is actually so thin that it's made to sit onto the top surface of your floor. We could have done that, but when we have the ability to be as precise with our depth as we can with Origin, I decided to do a very shallow lip right here so that when we install this, it's just completely flush with the top surface. And then finally, over here, you might not have even seen it, but it is a Dutchman patch. You damage a section of flooring, you can quickly and easily use the same material as the floor, pocket out an area over your damage, cut a positive, and a little bit of glue and a little bit of hammer. Boom, repaired. Let's show off some of the things we have on the wall. So buying registers, floor vents, anything like that, that's great. But if you have a client that wants a custom floor vent made out of the same exact material, you can do that. We just took a section of the flooring that we're using, we glued it up, we planed it down, and we cut our own custom floor vent. Again, same shoulder, all done on tool. This was not done on tool. This was, we used a design file for this pattern here. But there we can fine tune that fit, and you have a custom register. Showing off some of our medallions. Every part here was made with Origin. Again, we stuck with that classic circular shape. But then something like this, I mean, you could, using a router template for something like this is a little too tricky, but with Origin, being able to get these sharp corners, and again, oval shapes, it's just like that. And then on a larger vent, this is just a really beautiful pattern that one of our coworkers made. Is a larger vent that it's in his home, and we just absolutely love it.
Hello everyone, I'm Sam here at the Shaper headquarters, and we're going to go through one of these designs in Fusion. We're going to set up the file. It's a compass inlay. Then we're going to hand it over to Jake. Jake's actually going to cut it and install it. So we've got a bunch to get through, so I'll try to get to the Fusion side of it quite quickly, and we'll be moving at a modest pace to make sure you see the whole thing. So you may have to scrub back and forward, pick up all the little details, but hopefully this will get you a great idea of how to make these yourself. So first up, you can use Fusion. You can also use Illustrator or Affinity, basically anything that enables you to export an SVG file. Fusion, we have our own software where we actually enable you to select a face and export it ready to cut. Illustrator and everything, we have all the data online on our help files to show you how to export vector shapes ready for Origin to cut. And then if you're ever struggling, there's always obviously the community, but there's also assist, which is you can send in a napkin sketch and say, I would like to know how much this will cost to produce as cut files as a project, much like what you would see on ShaperHub. But we're going to get back to Fusion, and we're going to show you the techniques we use to make this compass shape. We're going to use circular patterns, a bit of basic drafting and constraints, and then we're going to show you how to round the corners so that you don't need to chisel out the edges. What I mean by that is you can see here these sharp inside cuts. So the pocket Jake was talking about to accommodate some of this geometry. The geometry technically has a sharp point at the end, each one of these little sort of compass points. And then depending on the cutter you use, this is how much of a radius you'll see. So a 1/4 inch cutter has a 1/8 inch radius where it will not clear material at the end. You can always use a smaller cutter and get more detail. Often when you're down at 1/16 of an inch, that's a really great diameter, or even 1/8 of an inch. When you're standing above a floor, don't necessarily want it to be super pointy. It gets fragile at the tip, so that radius actually helps the wood stay stable and look good. The other option is if you do want a sharp edge, you can always chisel out the corners, and that will get you the ability to do very, very pointy details like that. So here's a sort of moderately exaggerated one, looking at those rounded corners. You notice the inside and the outside have to be radiused depending on how they come together. So we now going to switch over to a Fusion demo and do this from scratch. So I'm in Fusion now. This is an Autodesk product, and I'm just going to start up here a new project. I'm going to tell it I want to see my origin, and I'm going to select that bottom face. I'm looking down from the top, so this is the X, Y plane, and Z is pointing up. So I'm going to create a new sketch up here. And now I'm looking, you can always check here where you're looking. I'm looking straight down on that plane. So now I can start doing things like create that circle as the first reference I'm going to use. I'm just going to double check here the default units. So I'm in millimeters. So I want to be in inches for this one. So we can change that there. And I'm looking at my origin. I can hide and show that whenever I want to see it. So now we just kick off. I've got the dimensions we saw in the diagram earlier. So I'm snapping to that center point and dragging. And you can see here that little blue highlight with a number. I'm actually just going to type in 16. So I'm no longer dragging. You can see there's a little lock icon beside it. That's telling me I'm entering exactly 16 inches. I hit accept, and then with the enter button. And I'm zooming out with the mouse middle scroll wheel. And if I want to pan around, I'm using the center mouse scroll wheel as a button. So I press and drag, and I can look around. So at the moment, this is a black path, which means it's constrained at the center, and it knows its diameter. So it can't exist anywhere else. It can't be dragged. You can't put it anywhere else. So a lot of this is going to be about creating constraints. So you'll see here, I've made a constraint at that center. That means it's snapped to the center. That would be as though I'd clicked the coincident button. So we're going to start creating some shapes. First up, a line. Now I'm going to use this center point and reference that. And notice as I drag up, there's that blue dotted line tells me I'm snapped or aligned to that center point. So now I've got a little cross at the top, which says I'm going to snap it to that. It's coincident to the circle. And I'm coming down and dragging the whole way through. There's also, you'll see in the center there, there's a little, when it's dead vertical, you'll see a little blue line telling me that's either horizontal or vertical. So I'll accept that and then hit escape. At the moment, you can see it's saying place first tool. Once I hit escape, it'll go back to my selection option. So often if Fusion gets into a strange state, it will be trying to do something, trying to input data for another operation. So just hit escape and you'll be good to go. So now selecting that center line, I can now go create. So I'm in the sketch menu here, and I'm going to go a circular pattern. So we're going to make 8 of these about the center point. And it starts off with 3. I can either press the up arrow, or I can just type it in by selecting that and hitting return. Keep in mind, whenever we create these dimensions, they create this little call out, and you can drag it and get it out of the way, put it wherever you want. Another thing worth noting, when I created that pattern, it's added this little detail here, this little blue thing. I can double click that and return to my pattern, and edit it. So I can turn some lines off, turn them on, do whatever I want. I'm going to cancel that, but just know that all of these things contain information that can be manipulated. So now I'm going to start creating this shape. So I'm going to create a line, come down here from the top, and I'm just snapping it here. I'm actually not paying attention to the dimensions. I just want to make sure I snap it to this edge. And I'm going to do the same from the top to this edge. Now, I'm going to hit Escape and then go D. This is the dimension tool. So that's the same as clicking this button up here. That is where I can set up more constraints or dimensions between things. So you see at the moment, it's measuring this line. If I select another line, now it's measuring the angle between them. If I move around, you'll see it's measuring the angle from vertical or from whatever other line. I want this angle here, so I'm going to click it and type in my value, 6 degrees. Same on the other side, 6 degrees. Now, that's part of what we need set up. We've got, I'm going to create another line that goes out. Okay, so we're going to have to get a bit faster here. I'm going to quickly do a couple more lines to do this angle here. So exactly the same process. I won't talk you through exactly what I'm doing. D for dimension. Notice I'm not too concerned about the actual position I'm drawing. I just want to make sure I snap to these lines. That's how a CAD package like this gets really powerful. So that's an 8-degree angle. Likewise with this one. 8 degrees. And then I'm going to make a dimension from this end point to this point. You'll notice it can be, as I move around, it's dimensioning it differently based on where I click. So pay attention to where it's trying to draw it. I want that one to be 3 inches. Now, we're going to pattern these around, but I'll go to another example here. We're effectively going to make this, and we're going to round over these corners here, and then we're going to pattern it. So I'll quickly do the pattern here. Sorry, the round over at the top, and then I'll show you rotating those around and duplicating them. I'm going to go create an arc, a center arc. I'm going to click here, here, and then here. Now I'm going to dimension that. So this is where I'm baking in the radius of the cutter I intend to use, plus a little offset, 0.08. And then you'll notice we can actually manipulate this as well. And so I can go that edge, escape, that edge I want to be tangent to this. And it's going to align perfectly there. And then this edge, I want to bring that down, make it tangent to this as well. So that is now ready to extrude that shape. So that's got the radius baked into that corner. So now we're going to move along to this other file that's ready to go and look at what we've got here. So these are now ready to export origin. I'm actually going to delete everything after here and just show you how I'm going to duplicate these. So I've actually gone in and named these. And you'll see that when I do the pattern on these, that'll come in handy. So I'm now out of sketch mode. I'm in solid mode. So I'm going to go pattern, circle, and at the moment I don't have the axis I want, but when I choose the axis, that highlights. I'm going to select this blue line, and it's going to rotate around here. So you can see how once you get some basic geometry set up, this ability to create a circular pattern gets really effective really quickly. So now if I just make 4 of them, it'll automatically complete that pattern and go OK. Now there's a little more to it than that. I'm actually just going to select this shape, and you'll notice I've named it. When I go to Tools and use the standard origin exporter, so it asks me to select the top face. This is the face I'm cutting from. And you'll notice because I've named this, it's actually going to use the same name when I export it. So large diamond dark, save. So that element is now ready to cut. And then I can do the same. Cool. And then large diamond light. So I would just go through those operations and I'd be able to export all the positive elements for Jake to get cutting.
All right, let's actually cut this thing and bring it to real life. So the letters that he was talking about are going to be my my cardinal letters, my north, south, east, west. I already have those cut out, but what I need to cut one more long point out of my walnut. So come over to the tool. I'm on my workstation. I have my material on my shelf. I can kind of zoom out here, show you what I'm working with. I've nested them nicely together, so I'm wasting as little material as possible. And also some of my cuts kind of act like two cuts because they're so close together. So I'm going to go ahead and cut one of these out. You want to mute my audio.
So I can see this. While Jake can't talk right now, I'll be able to add some info about what we've got going on here. So Jake is cutting the positive element on the workstation here, and you'll see he's got a small offset there, 0.01 inches. Now he's going through and doing a finishing pass. So this is going to be slightly deeper. So he left a skin on the bottom in that first pass. Now he's going through cutting to the final dimension. So this will be 0.115 inches deep. So that's going to cut all the way through the element. It's going to come free. He's got double-sided tape on the back there. And he's going to then be able to place that inside his pocket. Notice we're cutting to the line. So the finish pass is exactly 0. So should he want to add a glue gap, he's going to do that to the pocket on the actual floor itself. But this shows you the approach you would usually use to cut out all the little positive inlay elements. Same principle applies to any inlays.
Okay. So, like I said, I only needed one, but I want to show you one of my favorite tools, especially when I'm doing inlays. It is a flexible metal putty knife. It allows me to get right under my thin material without, oh, there it is. And I can kind of wedge under that double-sided tape, and especially the little fragile pieces, I can lightly pry them off. So I'm going to pry this off. A little twist of the putty knife is all it takes. And this piece, and there we go. Now I got my long spear piece. We can move to the floor. Now if you hop over to my origin cam, I want to show you what it looks like when I drag from my workstation over to my floor. I'm going to set it down, and it's going to recognize that workspace. All I need to do is tap that green button, and we're back into this floor piece that I've already cut. I've already gone ahead and done all the pocketing here. The only thing I need to do is cut my final E. So I'm going to come up to the E, and there you go. So I'll have a pocket and an inside cut. Now I'm going to cut this to a 0.0 offset because I found that actually fits best for this particular piece. But the rest of my offsets for my long triangle pieces are actually a negative 0.003. Gives a little bit more room because we have a lot of things interacting. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this pocket, then inside.
So the pocketing operation you'll see happening here, that entire area that's got the diamond dashes on it is available for pocketing. So it's kind of a paint by numbers operation. You'll see there's a little barrier between him where he's cutting, which is indicated by the blue cut history, and the actual final dimension of his letter, which is the black line. So Jake just goes through, clears that area. He's cutting 0.115 inches deep, and he's cutting with a 0 offset here. So he's going to then follow through and do an inside cut. So we're currently pocketing, live on tool, we can change that to an inside cut. He could change it to an outside cut, whatever he wants. So he's adding a offset. So this is in the positive direction, which means it's leaving material still. So this is still a roughing pass. And then for the final pass, the pass that really matters in terms of the final edge quality, the finish quality of the cut, he'll do that 0.003 negative offset, which will, sorry, this one he goes to 0. The other elements he does 0.003 negative. So he should get this to fit perfectly at 0. We encourage you to test cut into the materials you expect to be installing together. So get some offcuts and experiment with your cut settings. And now he's doing the finishing pass at 0. So the key here is it can be tempting to sort of race through this very rapidly, but because this is the final cut that's most visible, even though it's removing a tiny amount of material, spend the time to move smoothly, and you'll get an excellent finished quality cut. So it's just a tiny little sliver it's taking off. This is a conventional sort of CNC operation. Even on a big gantry machine, for the best quality cuts, you're going to do a finish pass.
All right. Another tool that I want to show you guys is my favorite sanding stick. This is going to allow me just to clean up these little details and just knock some of that fuzz off, so that my numbers, or my letters rather, will just pop right in. And we will share a link to this because it really does come in handy. Just makes your life a lot easier. Okay. Now, see it all come together. I bring that in. Just a light tap. Beautiful. S in. Now, I'm not gluing these in now, but honestly, I won't be able to get them back out, so. To the north. I'm just using a soft rubber mallet.
You could always cut those back out, Jake. Although whisper in your ear, that would be a fun test for Origin.
Especially as long as I don't remove my tape, I can do whatever I want to this, and I can keep working on.
That's right.
All right. Now my favorite part. Sneak those in there. I know a lot of these are going to snap right into place. They're not just going to fall in. Oh, I love it. And again, these pieces, show you a little closer. These are really tiny pieces. I was really gentle when I was cutting these out because I didn't want them to lose tact on the double-sided tape on my workstation. Just let me know. Sorry about that. I'm going to squeeze this right into that pocket. There it is. There's that snap. Coming around. As you go around, it starts to get a little tighter. Needs a little help from the mallet. And our final piece. Beautiful. Love it when it comes together. All right. Now, in an actual application, I'd have some glue under that. I'd let that set up. I'd come back in on my flooring sander and bring it flush and put a nice strong coat of finish over it. And I think that since we have a little bit of time, we'll hop back over into Illustrator and kind of show how we did the letters.
Looking at an E here. So this is what we are working on, what Jake was working on. So we start off with live text, and this is just some font on my computer. I'm going to take it and I'm going to go type create outlines. So live text is like text that's referencing a font, and it calls that all in. It's not what Origin uses. Origin uses actual curves. So we're going to bake it out to curves. And you'll notice this one's got all sorts of horrendous stuff in it. So I'm going to actually run it through Pathfinder and go unite. So that's now a no longer editable text. I can't, with the text tool, go in and select it and type something else, inches. So I can enter an inch into a millimeters project, much like on Origin. So now what we have is all of these corners radiused so that our cutter can get in there. We can have fun with this, actually. Hopefully no one's opposed to having fun with this. Just simulate what it'll look like if a cutter goes around this. I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to make this layer a stroke. So this is the layers menu. So now the second one here, we're going to lock one, and I'll hide that. This second layer I've made has a stroke, a black stroke, and we're going to make that red. And then we're going to do an offset on this. Object, path, offset path, 0.0625 inches. And we can preview that if we want. So this is now effectively doing what we're going to see on Origin. So I'm going to hide, the inside one. So this is if I was to cut on the outside of that path. So now I can just mimic what it's going to look like if I use an 1/8 inch cutter, 0.125 inches. 2 points in there. All right, got to select it. This is actually a really fun way of keeping on top of your projects, 0.125 inches. Right, and then I'll change the stroke to have an end cap and a round the corners. So that's how these corners behave, or the end of a line would behave. So now you'll see what we're actually cutting when we cut around that with a cutter. So you'll see now our path matches this perfectly. So if I make that on and off, you'll see we can confidently cut on the outside of this and on the inside of this path, and this is just simulating an 1/8 inch cutter running around that. So that was a very quick overview of both Fusion and some of the things to consider in Illustrator. Obviously, we've got a lot of info on our support site, the top of the Shaper Tools website. There's also Shaper Assist if you ever stall out and would be happy to have someone pay to prepare cut-ready files for you. It's assist.shapertools.com.
Now that everything's in, I just want to give you all a closer look at the final inlay. There we go. So that is the view top down. Like, we're using an 1/8 inch bit, and when you're standing at my height, those corners look pretty sharp. But if I were doing this and I wanted sharper points, I could use a 16th inch bit. And as I get closer, we can kind of see what we're talking about here. So that W just fit in there fantastically, and these 2 points meeting to create that total radius. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. I'm Jake at Shaper Tools. Get out there and cut.